Hello, everybody. All right, I think everybody's in. Looks like they're in. If you aren't already muted, I'm just gonna ask that you guys mute yourselves, just so we don't hear any background noise or anything. I'm George Hargis. I'm the social media manager and PR manager at USPA. And I'm here with Shauna Finley. She is a master rigger, examiner, an instructor examiner, AFFI, TI, pilot, drop zone owner. She does all the things, highly experienced. So she's done a few of these for us before, and she's prepared some slides for you guys today. If you have any questions for Shauna, just write them in the chat, and then kind of towards the end, whenever she has time, she will get to your questions. So without any further ado, Shauna, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I know it's been a little bit since we've done our Ask a Rigger, but I'm looking forward to chatting about our gear. Some of our northern drop zones and our colder climate drop zones are starting their seasons again, and we just need to get reacquainted with our gear. So there's been a couple of things that I've been finding lately on people's gear when they bring them in for their first repack of the season, and they're kind of disturbing. It's a little bit interesting. So I downloaded a couple of these pictures and I wanted to chat with them first, but the biggest thing I'm seeing is that we're not taking time to know our gear. And I know of a couple other Ask a Rigger sessions, we've gone over our gear and stuff, but it seems like everyone that joins us all the time, and I recognize a lot of these names, it's great to see everybody, that we're not reaching enough people, and it's really frustrating. So what I want to do is, let's go to the next slide, George.
Okay, hold on
real quick. I'm going to bring up,
I don't know if it's going to let me do, come on, next slide. There we go.
I'm going to try to shrink my screen so I could read my notes along here. All right. If we can throw up the picture of the cutaway cables, George, any one of those are pretty significant.
New share, we got this guy right here. Is that up on your screen, Shauna?
Yeah, that's perfect. So I know on my Instagram account that I post rigging, I don't want to say snafus, but things that I find when I'm doing repacks. And people are like, oh my God, I don't want to be the next one up there. Well, this cutaway cable, so cutaway cables I know we talked about previously, these are owner applied maintenance components. All right, as an owner of a harness container system, you can clean your own you can clean your own cables. And it looks like this owner had not touched their cables in quite some time. I almost questioned if they had stored it next to a wood burning stove or a coal burning stove or something, because it was so dirty. But this is one of the things that us as rig owners can actually clean ourselves. Okay. I think there's a couple other pictures on there. There might be one other one of the actual cables, George, that before I tried cleaning them. And what I have done for you guys this time is I've included a link to all of the manufacturer packing manuals, main manuals, maintenance manuals for canopies, components that I have myself that I use on a very regular basis. Okay, so these were the cables before I started. All right, he said that he hadn't really jumped in the 6 months since it had been packed previously, and that he was just bringing it back for a next cleaning. Now, I had been the rigger that packed this rig previously, and I know for a fact that I cleaned the cables and they were not like that when I put them back in. So it was a little disturbing. Again, we talked about where he was storing the container. I did use it's called a soft bore snake that you actually use cleaning for firearms, and I used it to clean the hard housings. And I got some junk out of the hard housings, but this was pretty disturbing. And I actually had to put the handle under my foot and clean the cables, and there was a lot of friction. It was crazy. So but this is something that we can do as owners, all right? There are several different sprays that we use. Some people use WD-40. I'm not a fan of that. Other people use lubricating spray. Whatever gets the gunk off the cable and doesn't dry them out. You don't want dried out cables, but you also don't want lubrication staying on the cable, because if there's gunk in your hard housings, it's going to deposit right in that cable, and it's going to result in a hard pull, and it's completely going to negate any hard work that you did to clean those cables. Okay. Are there any questions on that picture?
So what did you say was the preferred cleaner that you use, Shauna?
So I use a it's not a food grade. It's like a generic version of WD-40. And I only say that because I can't remember the name of the version right off the top of my head, but it has a light lubricant on it, but it also wipes clean off the cables. It does help to moisturize the cables, so it's not an alcohol-based thing, so it doesn't dry them out. But I also know other riggers that use straight alcohol, like rubbing alcohol to clean the cables. And you just really have to watch for cracking or dry rot on them if you're going to do that on a regular basis.
Okay. All right. Anyone with any questions? I don't think I see anyone.
What's the green check mark on next to some people's stuff?
I have no idea.
I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, just ignore that.
Okay. I don't want to ignore someone if they have a question or whatnot, but if it doesn't mean anything, it looks like maybe it was like, hey, good job, Shauna. I'll go with that.
Okay.
I'll go with that. All right, let me look back at my slides. All right.
Okay.
So some of the things that as owners, yeah, you can go to the owner applied maintenance screen.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around.
That's okay.
Wow, we have 41 people in here today. This is awesome. This is phenomenal. And you know what I'm loving that is that we're recording this and that anyone can take this link and put it in their Fun Jumper forum on Facebook or email it to their drop zone or, just reference it for questions and stuff.
All right. I had to stop that share to get a new one going. All right. Screen share back to the PowerPoint. Come on.
Are you at the drop zone, Shauna, or in your rigger loft?
I am. No, I am at the drop zone now. I'm in the hangar. It's a beautiful evening here, so I had to have the hangar door open, and yeah, it's really nice here now.
All right. Is the PowerPoint back up? Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so talking about owner applied maintenance. So this is something as similar as like you own a car and there's certain things that you can do to maintain your vehicle. Or if you're a plane owner, there's certain things that you can do to maintain your plane that you don't have to be an FAA AMP. You don't have to be a car mechanic. You don't have to be a rigger, all right? And some of those things I have on my PowerPoint are your cutaway cables, all right? We just talked about those. Your main closing loop. We have 10% wear on a main closing loop, right? That's acceptable. How many people know exactly what that looks like? Yeah, not too many. So what we do is that, hey, I have a whole drawer full of main closing loops. I'll probably forget to grab the dollar from you. So, but they usually cost $1. But if you don't know the question, if you don't know what the wear is, and you have to ask that question, chances are just change it. It takes all of 5 minutes to do. And if you've never done it, I actually have a video up on my YouTube page, how to do it pretty quickly. It's all of a 5-minute procedure. All right. The routine inspection of the entire system. All right, just because you're not a rigger, but you own the system, you should be checking every part of that webbing. All right, the hip rings. If you have an articulated harness and you have rings on your hips or on your chest, make sure that those hip rings and chest rings aren't nicked and they're not damaged. They're not showing tarnish. All right, there's no rust on them. Okay. And if you question anything, you can go directly to the manufacturer websites and they have all the owner's manuals right on there, which incidentally, in the next slide, I actually give you a link to all of, I put them all in a Google Drive. So you guys, cool. You all have access to it. You can access everything. I made it so you guys can view it, but not change it because I don't want anyone deleting anything for someone else. But this is what I want to do for you guys. So everything is in here that I have. And if there's something in there that you're looking for that I don't happen to have, we have such an awesome community of other riggers and contacts and manufacturers that we can actually get those for you. All right. So we're also looking at our pilot chutes, our main pilot chutes. We'll hold them up to the sun. How many really light spots or holes can you see? All right. Is it a ZP pilot chute? And if it is, can you breathe through it? If you can breathe through a ZP pilot chute, it's probably time to go ahead and replace that. All right. If it's an F111 pilot chute and it's a little bit breathable and it still has good snatch force on it, you're getting good openings, awesome. But keep an eye on it. All right. What about your kill line? How many of us have really fuzzy kill lines? Okay. It's so much easier to have your rigger replace a kill line before it gets snapped, as opposed to trying to fish it out of the bridle once it snaps. All right. So if your kill line starts getting fuzzy, probably time to look at replacing it. All right. If the window when you cock your pilot chute, if the window on your bridle isn't a color anymore, but it's kind of faded, you can totally recolor that, so you know that you're actually cocking it all the way, and you're making sure that the pilot chute is still holding air and it's acting like a little parachute on its own. All right. And
Shauna, what do you recommend coloring the window with? What do you use?
I use a Sharpie. I use a colored Sharpie. I've seen people want to do like the whole black thing, like you don't see any white and black is okay. I use green, I use red, I'll use blue. It depends on what was on there first, but I find green really stands out nicely. So green Sharpie, that's what I use. And I want to kind of open this up to some people in the audience here. What other things on your harness container system do you feel as though should be in your regular owner applied maintenance? No?
I have one that kind of came to mind. I used to have an older Talon with the tuck tabs, and it started just like opening when I was in free fall. Like the tuck tabs just didn't stay tucked. And even if I like on the plane was like making sure that they were tucked, somehow during the skydive, they would come untucked. And then I had someone tell me like, oh, are you hanging your harness? Are you leaving them open or closed when you're hanging it or storing it? And I didn't realize that the way I was storing my gear was affecting the way it was functioning like on my back later on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. So some of the not older, but some of the manufacturers, the tuck tabs, they can be very narrow, and they're not always super long to be able to go underneath everything, just to hold it enough to be able to, to extract the main risers. And if we hang them up on rig hangers, sometimes that rig hanger, the bar catches right where those tuck tabs are, and it could misform them. So when it's sitting on your shoulder, it's not formed to your shoulder anymore. It's formed to what that bar was that you're hanging on. And it's just plastic stiffener that's in there. And over time, it will create memory, and it'll start popping out. And then eventually you get brittle enough and it'll crack. And if you don't catch it quick enough, it's obviously not going to stay tucked anymore and protect your risers. It's actually going to cut through the cordura of your container. And that's a lot harder for a rigger to go ahead and then repair after the fact. So if you're finding that you're storing your gear hanging up, it's not always a bad idea to open your tuck tabs. So it's not having all that force on the tuck tabs, that it's just actually on the webbing, or lay it on the ground and leave it on the ground or in your bag. I generally leave mine on the packing mat, which probably isn't the best place for it. But I have seen other people, when they hang their rigs up here at the drop zone, they undo their tuck tabs so that plastic stiffener isn't crinked right up against the hanger that they have on a piece of metal. Yeah, that's a really great point. All right, what else do we got?
So I don't know if you can read the chat, Shauna, but Chad just said kill line length as well. Just had one come through that had shrunk considerably.
Yeah, that's tough. So if your kill line it's the original kill line, you're going to cock it so many times, and it's going to move inside and outside that bridle, and you're going to create friction with a little bit of heat, and it causes that material to shrink. So you're not getting the full effect of cocking your pilot chute. It's not fully, I don't want to say cocking, it's not fully inflating because it's so short. So you're essentially having an uncocked pilot chute as you throw your main pilot chute out, and we all know that could be pretty dangerous, all right? Because you don't have the drag to pull the main D-bag out, all right? So that's dangerous. But we can, there's plenty of videos out there on YouTube, and there's a couple that I use on a regular basis to make sure that that the kill lines get replaced at a regular interval. But that's something that, a couple hundred jumps, look at it, definitely. All right. Let me see here. Another question. What special protocol, if any, should be used to inspect harnesses, rings, etc., following a severe hard opening? Should a non-rigger owner inspect the gear? That's a great question, Donald. Okay, so the question was, after a specifically hard opening, should a non-rigger inspect their own gear, or should it be left to an FAA rigger, and what should we inspect during that? That's an awesome. So let's take that first part of the question. What should be inspected? So if you think about it, if you experience a really hard opening, all right, and all of the stress points on your container system that are going to come in contact with your body, you're probably going to feel it across your sternum, so you're going to want to check out the chest strap, obviously, but everything in that harness container system, because everything absorbs some type of energy in one fashion or another. And for that, I would definitely grab your rigger and be there with them and inspect your rig with them. You're inspecting all of the stitching on the hip rings, you're inspecting the stitching on the chest strap, you're looking at any type of indicator thread on the harness that you're on that could possibly have been caused stress. All right, the way things are stitched, it's to accept the load and the energy when it gets transferred from the opening of the canopy down the risers, into the jumper, into the harness container system. But if you have a really hard opening, I've seen on one of our student harnesses, it actually split the main lift web. There were two types of webbing that were sewn together, and it actually split the webbing and broke all the stitching, which is exactly what's supposed to happen, as opposed to the webbing taking all of the damage. Okay, so it was something as simple as it just had to be restitched after it was fully inspected, and it was good to go. But there's certain stitching on the harness container systems that are designed to break before the jumper actually breaks. All right, so I would absolutely be with your rigger while it's being inspected. All right, because you as a jumper, yes, you might have sat through this video and you know what you're looking for and everything, but there's always that one little extra thing that you're not going to see that a rigger might be able to open up and see and be like, ooh, it tore the back pad away from the actual harness, or it tore the, I saw one once, it actually tore the reserve tray away from the main tray, and it was kind of hanging on. It was horrifying to see, and the jumper was fine. I mean, he was fine with this hard opening, but that it was horrifying. And we wouldn't have found that unless he had brought it back in and said, hey, let's just pop the reserve and see what's going on in there. And we opened it and found it. All the stitching along the reserve tray was just obliterated. So that's, yeah, that's definitely get your rigger involved in that. Let's see. Dave, yeah, great. Don't use WD-40. Yeah, I was just using it as a word that everyone knew, but yeah, I prefer the food grade spray silicone too. And what I'll do is I'll grab a picture of what I use, and I'll send it to George, so we can include this in the recording afterwards, so it's available. All right, I'll even put it in the Google Drive and stuff. So, right. Donald, did that answer your question? I can't see him. All right. Yep. Peter, great spandex BOC. This is something that we need to all be looking at. As jumpers, we use the BOC every single jump, and we're packing it every single time. If your BOC starts to get floppy, we obviously can have a real big issue, because we can have a premature opening, right? If we're free flying and we have a premature opening, you are in for a world of hurt if you're at free fly speeds having a preemie. So yeah, your spandex BOC, that's huge. If you have any questions about that, grab up your rigger. They're usually able to either fabricate something or get a replacement BOC and get that fixed up for you pretty easily. Let's see. Is a Sharpie ink prone to deteriorating lines versus a watercolor ink that may be less invasive to the material? From Eric. You know what? That is a great question. I guess I grew up as a rigger using a Sharpie, and that's what I was taught. I saw it when I was in my rigger school, both my senior and my master, and it's kind of just what I've always used. I'm sure that the documents in PIA, in their archives, they probably have the documents that have tested the different types of inks that we use on our fabrics. I can definitely research that for you, and I'll put that in the Google Drive link if you'd like, because that's a great question. Let's see. Would Swiss-made Mobius 9010 oil clean the cable and then wipe off? I use it for watchmaking. You know what, Keith? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not familiar with that oil. I would have to refer back to the manufacturers specifically, or I would have to refer back to the technical documents at PIA and see if they have something on that. Honestly, I'm not sure of that question, but I will keep that question and I'll make sure I find out the answer for you. JR, blue Sharpies never dry. I love it. And you can see him really well on the black bridle too.
Sounds
Do we have
like
any other
he
questions?
knows from experience.
I learned a lot of my stuff from JR. Absolutely. He's got great advice. Let's see what else we got. All right. So let's look at, I got to see what other pictures I sent you, George, that I wanted to show everyone.
Okay.
All right. Let's pull up these toggles, the two pictures of the toggles, because this caused quite a bit of questioning when I posted them last week on my Instagram page.
Yeah. I don't know if I can do two pictures at a time.
If you haven't seen these toggles yet, and this is kind of why. Okay, can everyone see the pictures of the toggle here on the? Because I can see it on mine. Yeah, Chad. Wow. Yeah, wow is right. That's what I said. So a little bit of backstory on this. So this was in a rig that was getting ready to be jumped. Okay, so I know this jumper well, and the end of last season, what we did, there was a question of how long his brake lines were, and I had watched them land a few times and said, okay, you're not getting a full flare, whether it be a mobility issue, you're, the average size human being, and these were stock brake lines. And the stock brake lines for this specific canopy, I believe, were 25 and 5/8 inches from cat eye to toggle. And that's super long. Okay, so we had said, hey, let's take off, I don't know, like 5 or 6 inches and get it to where you need to be. So I watched this jumper jump a couple times and we said, okay, this is perfect. So we kept it at the altered brake line. So at the end of the year, he was thinking, all right, I'm going to probably sell this canopy. Let me put it back to stock. Okay, because he didn't want to have to sell it and then try to explain to the buyer that, hey, I altered the brake lines. This is what they're at. He wasn't sure. So I said, yeah, it's not a big deal. So, but he brought it to a rigger that that normally doesn't see this rig. Okay, it wasn't his regular rigger. I'm his regular rigger, and I just happened to be out of town. He took it to another individual and had said, hey, I want these put back to stock. Can you help me out with that? Okay. So this was the result. It came back from the inspection. It came back from the brake lines being altered to this. Got packed like that. The main got packed. And he didn't think anything of it all winter. And we happened to be sitting around the drop zone last weekend. Said, hey, I want to jump this is a Spectre. I want to jump my Spectre again. And, but I had the brake lines put back to stock. I'm like, ooh, I'm not comfortable with that because I know what we had them at last year. Let's measure them to see what they're at now. And when we opened it, this is what we found. So had we not opened his rig and he jumped it like this, I'm very doubtful that it would have been a happy landing for him. I also included a video on my Instagram where it actually shows, because those knots, I know the picture is blown up, but those knots are 4 or 5 inches away from the toggle. All right, so we all know that when we're flaring and we're coming down, that brake line comes through that metal guide ring. Well, those knots kept catching on those guide rings. So if he were to go to a full flare and one of those toggles, one of those knots caught a guide ring, say on the right side and not on the left, he would have fully flared himself right into the ground on the left side and driven himself right into the ground, probably at an altitude that he wouldn't have been able to recover from that, and he would have been severely injured. So that being said, I'm really glad that we did find this, and they were close to stock. I mean, where it's looped on the toggle, as you can see, it was actually kind of close to 25 inches, but this is not okay. All right. And this, I mean, this doesn't look okay. All right. So we were able to fix it. We were able to put them back to what he had last year, re-finger trap it, re-sew it, and safely reattach the toggles. But these are the type of things that you don't have to be a rigger to do. Okay. This could have been just a jumper that wanted to do his own rig and figured, hey, this works. So this obviously would not work. All right. Does anyone have any questions on that specifically? Everyone understands why that is dangerous. Okay. And I don't want to give too many specifics on this rig, the jumper, where it came from, what drop zone it came from, because we're here to learn. All right. And this could very easily have been a mistake because the individual thought that he was helping him out, put it back to stop so he could sell it, but didn't realize that he was going to actually jump it. All right. So we're here to learn. All right. And this is how we learn. No shaming, just education. Okay. Any questions about that? No? When you find something like this, do you report it or reach out to the rigger or what? Yes. So I do know this rigger. And I did reach out, super receptive, and I think there was a communication error on this, what was being asked for and what was actually done. So yeah, whenever I find something like this that could potentially hurt the customer or hurt the jumper, I absolutely talk to the rigger because I would like someone to do that for me. I mean, we're human. We make mistakes, all right? I don't think I've ever known someone to intentionally sabotage someone's gear that's going to get them hurt. And I have never spoken to another rigger that's made a mistake that wasn't receptive to, oh my God, what did I do? And being it brought to their attention. Just like me, I've made mistakes, and I've had other riggers call me and be like, hey, I don't want this to come across as me being arrogant, but this is what you did. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, yeah, you're right. The human factor, there's going to be errors. We have to obviously mitigate them as best as we can because we have a dangerous sport that we can do safely. All right. But yeah, this rigger was very receptive to me reaching out. All right. So, and if you have a rigger that's not, or if you as an owner of your rig find something and go back to the rigger that did the work and you question them and they give you an attitude, please don't go back to that rigger. Okay. Get a second opinion and find someone that you trust. Okay. No rigger should be giving their jumpers attitude when they come asking about their container or their any part of their components. All right. If I don't know something, I'm going to tell you I don't know it, and I'm going to find out the answer for you, or I'm going to direct you to someone that does know the answer. Okay. That was a great question. All right. Let's see what other pictures I got to show you guys. Any you guys have any questions whatsoever yet? I don't want to ramble on too long. Holes on the canopy, main, let me see. There's some, there we go. Size limitations. All right, buddy, that's a good question. What are the size limitations of holes in the main canopy and or reserve? All right, let's take the main first. All right, so on a main canopy, if you look closely enough, you will see the fabric is designed in little tiny, I call them grid squares. All right. That's just my military background. It's little grid squares. If there is a hole and it's about 1 or 2 little grid squares, all right, I take a fine tip Sharpie and I draw around them. All right, right around the hole. And I monitor it. All right, because I don't want to start putting ZP tape on things. I don't like putting tape on stuff. It's too small to patch. The patch would be so minuscule. You'd actually cut more of the canopy away trying to patch it. So I put a little Sharpie mark around it to monitor it. And I tell the jumper, all right, here's where your hole is. Let's check every couple of jumps. If it gets bigger, we need to reassess. All right. So we make sure that that we're watching it. Now, if it's big enough, if it's gotten about 4 or 5 little grid squares, that's patchable. All right, so we can patch that. So you'll have a small patch in your canopy, but that's what I would consider patchable. All right, I know some of the other master riggers on here might have some input on that too. That's generally what I look for on a main canopy. All right, on a reserve, I would send that reserve. I obviously watch it, but I would send that reserve right back to the manufacturer and have it done because it's considered under a warranty type of thing. While master riggers can patch reserve canopies, I personally would prefer to send them directly back to the manufacturer. So if there's anything else that's going along with that, the manufacturer could recertify that. That's my opinion on that. All right. Clearance on the patch. I'm not sure. Buddy, I'm not sure what the question on that is. A clearance on the patch? If you could unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hello. To make the repair on the hole, what's the clearance on the patch in relationship to the hole on the main canopy?
Oh, from the center of the patch?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna put me on the spot here. I go by my manual every time, so you're gonna catch me here. I'm drawing a blank here.
That's okay.
I see Peter and JR. Help me out here, guys. Unmute yourself and help me out. I sit with my manual every time, and I have all my measurements right on my manual. So I'm sorry, it's been a little bit since I've done a patch on a main canopy, a couple months at least. And you guys are gonna help me on that one. I can't see you, Peter. Yes, in the manual. Yeah, I have that one right in the. I have that manual as well. I look right in there, and that's where I get all my measurements from. So, but there is a standard measurement that you measure from the center of the actual hole out to where the patch is, and then the actual seam allowances around the edge of the patch. So it's all actually written in the manual that we follow every single time. So it's standard. It's not something that we kind of just come up arbitrarily with.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll throw that in the Google Drive as well for you, because I do have that answer. I'm drawing a blank off the top of my head. I'm sorry. All right, let's see. When the Vigil AAD celebrates its 10th birthday, what is the exact process for rejuvenation? How long do I expect my reserve to be? Okay, that's a great question. All right, so Tom had a question. When the Vigil AAD gets to its 10th year and it has to go back in for servicing. So not all Vigils have to do that. All right, so the older Vigils and the Vigil 2 Pluses, they used to be able to send us out batteries into the field, and we used to be able to do them in the field, but apparently they are lithium batteries and the US Postal Service doesn't allow those to be shipped anymore. So you have to send it back to the manufacturer. And then they send the same unit with the new lithium battery back through the US Postal Service back to us. So I guess that's the safe way of doing it. But it depends on the manufacturer and when you send it in. So at the end of the season, and everyone's AADs are coming up for that servicing, the plus or minus 6 months, you can expect somewhere between, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks. I've seen it as far as 12 weeks out for different units. Again, not all of them require servicing anymore. I know SSK for Cypress, they came out with a, it's not a required servicing, but it's a let's recommend a servicing. All right. And you send it in. And again, the longest I've ever waited for was 12 weeks. And that was literally in the height of everyone trying to get their unit serviced. So, and sometimes you never know, your rigger might have a loaner unit that you could use. I know Cypress back in the day, they used to have a loaner program that for a nominal fee, they would send your rigger a unit that they could put into your rig so you could use while yours is being serviced. I know I have a couple of them here at the drop zone that we do that on an occasional basis, and that helps out a lot. Not every drop zone is an AAD mandatory drop zone. Ours are, quite a few of them are. And if you feel comfortable not jumping with one and your rigger feels comfortable repacking it, then that's up to you. I've had very junior jumpers, like brandy new B licensed jumpers, try to get me to repack their rig with no AAD in it. And that's outside my comfortability zone. I won't do it. And if someone's super far out of currency and they're coming back and their AAD needs to be serviced and they want me to repack it without it, again, personal preference, I don't like that. It's just outside of my comfortability level, and I don't want to enable them to make bad choices. That's just me. All right. But I'm sure there are other riggers out there that don't feel the same way. Again, I just speak for myself. So hopefully your rig will only be out of service a couple weeks and not a couple months. Okay. All right. JR, thank you. Usually the smallest patch we make is a 6-inch square. Awesome. Thank you very much for that save. I appreciate that. And I actually found quilting squares, quilting patterns. They're a plastic pattern that I got from my local Michael's craft store that I use to make my patches. And I've got 6-inch ones, I've got 9-inch ones, 12-inch ones, and they're so much easier than trying to make sure you have square corners with a free floating ruler. It's amazing. And I'm a closet quilter to begin with, and that is, they help me a lot. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. You know what? We do such a dangerous sport and we do it safely, but if we don't know anything, if we don't know something, we have to say we don't know something. That's huge. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, and everyone really needs to remember that. We don't know everything all of the time. All right. All right. I love this. There's 46 of you guys in here. This is phenomenal. Does the same waiting time period apply to Cypress or AirTech? Yeah, generally. I mean, I don't want to speak for those companies directly, but yeah, I've seen between 4 and 6 weeks. On average, it looks like they're getting things back between 4 and 6 weeks. It's pretty quick, and they're super good at communication. They will call you as long as you you have a good phone number or an email. They will make every effort to get a hold of you as soon as it's done being serviced, so you can pay them and they can ship it right back. And it's usually like, once they ship it out, it's usually like a two-day turnaround, which is awesome. These guys have been amazing. And so Vigil, they can do some of their, I believe they do some of their servicing in DeLand, but they also have their main company over in Belgium, and they do all like the major, like the software upgrades, all that kind of stuff. So it has to get sent back to Belgium. You're probably looking at a little bit longer of a turnaround. And then SSK, they're out in Ohio, and they're pretty quick because they're domestic. So, which is good. Yep, look it up, don't make it up. I totally agree. I like that. I'm going to start saying that more often. That's good. All right, let's look at, George, if you could throw up the slide of the grommets, please. Awesome. So if everyone can see this, I know it's a smaller picture, but embarrassingly enough, this is my rig. And it's always true, like the Rigger's rig is usually the last one to get serviced, last one to get packed. It's probably still laying on the packing mat unpacked. So I jumped my rig, I think the last time in January-ish in Florida. And I left it packed, threw it in my truck, brought it back down to the drop zone. It sat there for a bit. So when I opened it up thinking I probably should repack it, I found my rubber bands had kind of melted onto my grommets. So there's another picture too, but the other side of it, there was more of the schmutz from the rubber band. I am not a fan of old rubber bands. I know everyone is saying these post-COVID rubber bands are awful and they're frustrating and they degrade at a different rate. And I think this is one of the post-COVID rubber bands. But yeah, you can see here where it came through the grommet on my locking stows, it melted right onto the grommet. And I actually had to use my fingernails to grab some of the residue off of it. So we don't want that, obviously. We want to make sure our grommets are nice and clean. And why do we want to do that? Because it's also giving us an opportunity. But my nails look good. Thank you, Liz. I'm trying. We're also trying to make sure that our grommets don't have any nicks in them. All right, so we run our nails along the inside of the grommets. All right. We're also making sure, so if this happens and part of the rubber band gets caught on that and it gets fused, what else is also going through there? My lines are also sitting on that. So if enough of that rubber band melts onto the grommets or melts onto my lines, it could snag the lines and it could cause an out of sequence deployment, or even worse, it could cause a backlog. It could cause a number of malfunctions that I'm going to end up having to cut away. Whereas I could have just taken a split second, cleaned off my grommets, scraped that off with my purple painted fingernail, and replaced the rubber bands. And I'm one that if I replace one rubber band, I try to replace them all at the same time. I only have 3 on my bag because one rubber band might be awesome and brand new, but the next 2 could be like really old and crappy, and those break before the other one. So if all 3 of my rubber bands are the same age, I feel a little bit more comfortable that they're going to have a better deployment, a better grab on my lines. Okay. And I know that one of the pictures I posted the other day with, I'm a big proponent, the best practices, double stowing your grommet stows. All right, I got a little heat from that last week when I put up a beautifully stowed, evenly stowed lines on one of my jumpers, main D-bags, and the grommet stows were not double stowed. So I took a little bit of heat for that, but yeah, best practices, we double stow our locking stows. All right, anyone have any questions about that? My wonderful grommet there with the melted rubber band goo on it. All right, awesome. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Let's see what else I have.
I just have a quick question about the rubber bands, and you said something about 2020 making them different. What is that? Is that just kind of like a joke, or are they actually being manufactured differently?
Yeah, so the company that made, well, it's a different company. So, and I don't want to slam that company, but so the company that used to make our rubber bands for the world of skydiving, awesome. They were phenomenal. But from what I understand is they went out of business either just before COVID or just after. So by the time our industry went through all of the rubber bands that we had stockpiled and hoarded, other companies had come on the market. And I think we were just not used to those makeup of rubber bands. They're fine. They're safe. I use them all the time. I just personally, I've found them to be frustrating. So I go back to the rubber band stashes that I had prior COVID, and they seem to last a little bit longer and don't snap as often or snap back on my cuticles and cause me to have bloody fingers as often as the old rubber bands did. It's just a different company. It's the same exact rubber band and style. It's a different process they're using to make it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And now I'll never be sponsored by this rubber band company now. if that's what I'm gonna
watch this.
Yeah, so what other questions that we have? Because I don't want to keep everyone on here too long. So the links that I put on that third PowerPoint, these are, again, all the owner manuals that I've collected over the past recent years. Canopy, main canopy packing guides. There's links to line trim. There are links to measuring your slider. There's links to really how the main canopies are packed in the trays. There's even some reserve rigging manuals in there if you really want to get crazy. You're not a rigger. You want to look at everything that we have to go through. But every time I pack a rig, I have one of these manuals open on my laptop, or I have it on the big screen TV behind me so I can watch what I'm doing. But these are in no way a substitute for actually understanding what you're looking at. All right. If you can look at these manuals all day, and I geek out on these things, I'll sit down with my manuals and I'll sit there and I'll highlight things and earmark things. It's hilarious. But if you don't understand what you're looking at and you don't know the practical application or the real world application of some of this information, it could be just as dangerous as not even reading the manual. All right. So if you don't understand what you're looking at, please shoot your rigger a message. Message me. Chances are all you guys have my phone number. Message me. Call the manufacturers. They're generally closed on Fridays when we're getting ready to jump for the weekend, but they're super awesome getting back to you. Okay. Take what you read in our Facebook forums with a grain of salt, please, because there are so many people out there with so many different opinions. If you ask one simple question, you're going to get about 900 answers, and it's hard to sift through the keyboard warriors and who's giving good information and who's not. All right. So if there's any question with any of those manuals, please ask, call, talk to the manufacturer, go to their website. All right. A lot of those manuals are right off their website, and it will direct you right to their website when you click on the link. All right. Awesome. Do we have any final questions? Peter, I can't see what you're holding up. What are you holding up? And my
Shauna, I'm just curious, if you only had like 3 or 1 or like 5 things to get people prepared for the season as they're checking their gear, like what would those top things be as we get ready to start jumping?
My top things be. All right. So
if it's just one thing or whatever, I don't know.
One of my things is, well, Well, let's make sure our reserves are in date and we know where to find the reserve data cards. Not every manufacturer has the same, and understand what's on those reserve data cards. Okay. I always push my jumpers to make sure that their contact information is on their card and they take a picture of it, just in case their rig gets stolen, because we know there's unscrupulous people around. But make sure your rig's in date. Put a reminder on your phone. Give your rigger at least a month's heads up. Don't show up but day before safety day and say, hey, is it going to be ready for me to jump tomorrow? If your main canopy has been packed all winter, or I like every 2 weeks, all right, get your main canopy repacked. All right, definitely do that. Give your packers some love, okay? And if you need a refresher packing, you are never too far into your skydiving career that you can't get a refresher packing. We do this very frequently throughout the season for all of our season jumpers. I'll go around and say, hey guys, let's have a half an hour refresher packing class. No judgment, no nothing. You could have 5,000 jumps, you could have 500 jumps, you could have getting ready to get your A license. Let's just have a refresher packing. I would rather you feel a little bit silly saying, hey, Shauna, how do you flake a nose again? Or how do I do this S-fold again? Rather than try to do it yourself, slam yourself open, break a sternum or something. That's not okay. So a refresher on your packing, and get better giving yourself and asking others for a gear check. Let's be super judgy in a good way of our fellow jumpers. We need to start looking at each other's gear, doing our 3 handles checks, our 3 rings check, our 3 attachment points at least 4 times. You can never do it too many. All right. And if you don't understand what you're looking at on your buddy's gear, ask them. All right. You could have just caught a life-saving or life-ending mistake, and you could have just saved their life. Teach your students the same thing, that anyone in the drop zone should be able to go up to anybody else in the drop zone and ask for a gear check, but know what you're doing. Hands on it means you're seeing it. Touch those 3 rings, spin the rings, make sure their RSL, if they're using one, is attached properly to the proper RSL guide ring. I've seen not the right way. Make sure that risers are hooked up properly. Make sure that all of your 3 attachment points are fabric, metal, fabric. All right, get your hands on them. As I transition from the front of doing a gear check for someone, I grab their left wrist and I look at their altimeter to make sure that their altimeter is zeroed if they're using an analog, or if they're having a good battery charge on their actual digital. And then I make sure that that's operational. And then I walk to their back and I check everything on their back. All right. If they're having a helmet, I make sure that the helmet's fitting properly, that the clip actually clips. And if they're flying a camera, I make sure that they have a cutaway system, because we all know that that's another snag hazard, and it's gonna change the way we're doing our emergency procedures. All right. So if you get into a routine that you're checking your own gear and you're checking your friend's gear, then that's a safe thing. So if those are the 3 things I would be able to tell you guys, I know that's a little long-winded, but gear checks do save lives. They absolutely do. Get handsy with your fellow skydiver. Get judgy. Start looking at their gear, and it just opens your eyes a little bit better too, because you're more familiar with more types of gear. Okay, that's.
Shauna, I think there was more
What I would
photos.
say.
I just put up the last image. I don't know if you wanted to cover that at all.
Oh yeah. So this was an older curve that came in for servicing. So this is the correct way of doing it. All right. So the AAD cable, you see that little black cable I circled in red, that comes out from the back pad of the reserve tray. It goes under the hard housing for the cutaway cable, and there's that little protector flap. It's actually kind of cushy, little protector flap. So there was another picture that it was actually done the wrong way. There you
Should
go.
be up now.
That was done the wrong way, and that's how I opened it. So again, I went right to the manual, because at first glance I'm like, it doesn't look too bad, because the flap was between the hard housing and the cable. I'm like, all right, that doesn't look too bad. But I had the manual open. I'm like, ooh, page 52. This is not how this is supposed to be. So I undid it and put it the way it was supposed to be, and and decided to take a picture of it and stuff. But reading the manual is super easy. And there are everything that you need to know about that rig is on a page in that manual. It is. They're either paper manuals, links on the websites. I just got a wings in the other day that I'm going to be putting together, and it has thumb drive that it came with. So quite a few manufacturers do thumb drives too, and just stick in the computer and everything comes up. So there's really not an excuse not to read the manual while we're packing. But yeah. And
Just curious, not to throw anybody under the bus, but was this mistake a jumper installation or another rigger?
It was another rigger.
Interesting.
But again, we're human, and the way they had it set up looked right. It did, but it also told me that they probably didn't have the manual open while they were doing it, because it specifically shows on that page, like if you put up the page of the manual that I had circled, it shows the page number and it shows it right there. So again, they've probably packed this rig about 1 million times, and you know, when you do things 1 million times, it becomes second nature, and it probably didn't jump out as wrong. Like it didn't jump out to me as wrong until I looked at the manual and said, okay, that's obviously wrong. So yeah. And this is obviously pre getting my nails painted, so sorry for that. I was looking a little shabby. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I have this evening. If anyone has any questions, everyone's got my my email, cell phone number. It's up on the website. I'm still Peter, what are you showing me there? Is that one of those air tags? It is. So this is just a real quick side note. These air tags have taken off. I've been doing them for a couple years now. Apple makes them. They're these tiny little button things, and we put them in what I call I call them cordura raviolis, because they're like the size of a little ravioli pasta. And Peter's holding it up right there, and it goes right inside. I stitch it all the way around. I stitch it right to the main D bag. And yes, it's an Apple product. So Apple iPhones and all those Apple crazy products, they'll pick it up quicker, but iPads do it. There's other GPS trackers that you can use that any smartphone will pick up. But hey, anything's better than nothing, right? These things cost, I think, $19.99 a piece. You can get them at a 4-pack at Walmart. That's where I got all ours for our tandem rigs, and they work. They do. I've had several jumpers that have Cutaway that find them pretty quickly. Because of how many Bluetooth Apple devices are in the area. It's like a crowdsourced Bluetooth, so it works pretty well. I do have pictures of that up on my website, on my YouTube channel and stuff. And there's and Kevin Gibson, I believe, just did an article. Yeah, thank you for putting up there. In the notes, there is in the Parachutist last month. Kevin Gibson did an awesome article about how he's installing them and where he's installing them. So it's totally worth it, in my opinion. $20, and you could cover your $3,000 canopy in a tree after a Cutaway. So, well, you guys are welcome. We've been on about an hour, and hopefully I shed a little bit of light on how to start your season safely, answered some questions, maybe got you thinking about other questions. But email us, text, call, everything, and we'll hopefully we'll get your answers for you. Let's see, what was there a link to Shauna's site? Yep, Bridgie, if you check on the if you check in the PowerPoint that we can email you the PowerPoint. There's a link for the Google Drive in there for all of the manuals. Okay, so if anyone needs that, George, we have their emails, right, from when they registered?
Yeah, so the link to the video, once I have it downloaded from the cloud, I'll send a link to everybody to this recorded video so you can revisit sections, and then I'll put in anything Shauna provides me with, her YouTube, her website, the links to these manuals, so you guys will have like a whole package of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Very cool. Everyone have a great night. It was great seeing everyone here. Hopefully I got to everyone's questions, and I love seeing all these faces. Everyone have a great night. Please be safe. And yeah, we'll talk to everybody soon. And hopefully we'll see you in the sky soon. All right.
Thanks, Shauna.
And remember to vote if you're, yep, we'll see you later.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye. Wow, look at everybody.